Hello everybody, this is my AGS 101 Soil Science Soil Site Survey Project. My name is Bradley Corkell and I am studying turf and ornamental horticulture. For my first site, my site was down in Salisbury, Maryland, and I chose a forest site. This site had a lot of different trees and roots and plants and brush that was very, very hard to dig down and get a sample, but it was definitely a forest type sample. The soil types at this site were pepper box rock walking complex, and that was a 74%, which made up the majority of this area of interest. The remaining 25% was Runclint loamy sand. So those were the two types that were present here. The description of those soil types at Salisbury were the pepper box rock walking. It has a very small slope, 0 to 2%, which means it's very, very flat and not the drainage is pretty poor. The soil type is very loamy sand down to about 36 inches, and then it switches to a sandy clay loam down to about 80 inches. The second soil type found at this location is Runclint loamy sand. This soil also has a 0 to 2 degree slope, which is pretty flat. This soil is only sandy loam until 9 inches, and then from there into 59 inches, this soil is straight sand. This area gets almost 4 foot of rain per year, so pretty sandy soil in that second portion. This was the soil texture for Salisbury. It was a 74% loamy sand in the pepper box rock walking complex, and the 25% Runclint loamy sand was 25%. So the majority loamy, pretty much all of the sand is loamy sand. My ribbon results were sandy loam with a weak less than 2 centimeter ribbon, and the soil when I did the sample in my hand felt very gritty. This is slightly different from the results that I got from the WWSS website as a loamy sand. So, sandy loam, loamy sand, they're just minorly different. This is my topo map and my area map for the Site 1, Salisbury Forest area of interest. The suitabilities and limitations rating for this site, I had some complications with it allowing me to choose the forest suitabilities. So I ran a ecological classification, and it actually gave me a forest land site. So I agree with that classification because this sample was taken from a forest. The additional information for this site that I chose to pull is the organic matter. In this case, the results we got were 74% of the pepper box rock walking. It came in at 2. That's what makes up the area of interest. The organic matter in this area of interest is 2.5, and the Runclint loamy sand has a rating of 1. So those are pretty low organic matter results. We're looking for 3 to 5% to have ideal organic matter, and to me that matches the results being because there's a lot of sand in this site, so not a ton of organic matter there. Site 2, I chose commercial grass lot in Princess Anne. This area is a commercial lot that we mow for my business, and it's all grass that is surrounded by farm fields. The soil types that are present in this AOI at Princess Anne is Quindaqua silt, which makes up 99% of this area of interest, and the remaining little percent is Woodstown sandy loam. That makes up the remaining 0.3%. The description of soil types from Princess Anne, QA or Quindaqua silt loam. It's a soil that has a moderately decomposed plant material for the first 2 inches, and then it stays as a silt loam or loam until 30 inches. And then it switches over to a loamy sand until all the way until 80 inches. This soil in the area of interest has a very gradual slope of 0 to 2. Again, very flat, poor draining land here. WDDB or Woodstown sandy loam is a much sandier soil that is sandy loam from 0 to 7 inches, and it stays that way until about 4 foot, and then it finally switches over to a fine loamy sand down to about 80 inches. This area of interest has a slightly higher slope of 2 to 5%, and it drains a little bit better here than this soil drains a little better than the Quindaqua silt. Soil texture for Site 2 at Princess Anne. The results came in at 99% silt loam in the Quindaqua silt loam, and only 0.3% sandy loam for the Woodstown sandy loam. So the majority of this AOI is a silt loam. My ribbon test resulted in a less than 2 centimeter ribbon and a very smooth feel, resulting in a silt loam, which in my opinion matched the WSS website results. These are my aerial maps and my topography maps for Site 2 at Princess Anne. My suitabilities and limitations that I ran for this site were a lawn and landscape and golf fairways. And the results came in at very limited, 99%, 0.3 being somewhat limited. On the WSS website, I ran these limitations. I disagree with these results because I cut grass there weekly, and the grass and this soil does very well. There's fields and agriculture surrounding this grass site, and I feel like every week when I go there, the grass is just popped up. So I don't know how it's very limited, but that's the results that came up. The additional information for Site 2, Princess Anne, chose to run the organic matter. The organic matter here came in, the Quindaqua silt came in at 2.69. Again, we're looking for 3 to 5%, so that's much closer, but still a little low. The Woodstown sandy loam came in at 1.8, so again, that's pretty low. Again, this site, things grow very quickly here. I feel like the soil's pretty good, but this is the ratings that we were given. The final site that I chose was a farmland site in Greenwood, Delaware. The soil types that were present in this area of interest were Mullica, mucky, sandy loam, which came in at 52%, and Woodstown sandy loam, which came in at 47%. So those two make up, they're pretty split evenly. The description of these soils is mucky sandy loam is the majority percentage of this sample. This soil has a 0.2% slope and is very poor draining. It's flat. The soil from 0 to 24 inches is mucky sandy loam, and from there to 65 inches is sand and sandy loam. From 65 to 80 inches, it finishes out as silt loam. The Woodstown sandy loam is the rest of the soil type, and it has a 0 to 2% slope, but is moderately well draining. So I guess a little better, a little more grade in that area. This soil from 0 to 30 inches is sandy loam, and from 30 to 45 inches is a fine sandy loam, and it finishes out as a loamy sand from 45 to 80 inches. The soil texture for Site 3, the Greenwood Farm, 52% is a mucky sandy loam, and 47% is a sandy loam. The ribbon test, the results came in with no ribbon. So this concluded as a loamy sand, which matched the WSS website results. So I thought that was pretty cool. I felt like overall this WSS website was pretty close to my results. Maps for Site 3. This is my aerial map and topo map for the Greenwood Farm site. And the suitabilities and limitations rating that I chose to run for the Greenwood Farm site was the farmland classification. And as you can see here, the rating is prime farmland if drained, and all areas are prime farmland, making up that 100%. So that matches what it is in real life, as that field there is tilled and has agriculture in it. So I thought that was pretty neat that the ratings were primed for farmland. The additional information that I chose for Site 3 is organic matter. The Mullaca sandy loam at 52% has a 15% organic matter, which is super rich in organic matter. Definitely the highest amount of organic matter out of any of the 3 sites, and again, this being agriculture, that makes sense. The Woodstown portion is much lower at 1.95, but overall, this is pretty good soil. This is my summary. The soil types vary very greatly depending on where you took the sample from. I took them very far apart, a good at least 30 minutes apart, and some of the samples were taken over an hour apart. So I tried to get some diversity there, and I feel like the results were pretty different. Good soil has an organic matter of 3 to 5%. The Greenwood Farm location has 15%, and the results showed that it would provide ideal farmland. Most of the samples I collected were, again, very far apart, but most of them had little to no slope and not the best drainage. And that kind of concluded me to believe that the Delmarva Shore is very flat, and that's why we have a lot of tack stitches and things for man-made draining. It's just not the best draining soil. So that's why we're getting runoff and erosion in spots where we have a lot of shorelines and things where it's sloping out, and those things can be wiped away. But most of our farm fields are really flat, and I feel like all my results had very, very little slope, and almost all had, moderately bad or bad draining soil. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this PowerPoint on my soil site survey, and thank you again.